The sun rose over suburban Atlanta, painting gold across the small brick building of St. Helena Academy, an elite private school where status mattered more than kindness. Inside, laughter echoed as expensive shoes clicked down polished floors. In the middle of it all sat Leila Bennett, 14, shy and quiet, her uniform neatly ironed but her shoes worn out at the edges. She had transferred here through a scholarship program, top of her old public school. But in this new world, intelligence didn't buy respect. Her teacher, Mrs. Parker, was a woman who measured worth by designer handbags and family names. She saw Leila as an eyesore, a charity case that made her classroom look less refined. That morning, as the students filed in, Mrs. Parker's sharp eyes found Leila sitting near the front. "Leila," she said sweetly, "maybe you should take a seat in the back today. We wouldn't want you to feel out of place." The class chuckled. Leila hesitated, cheeks burning. She quietly gathered her books and moved back. Outside, the school owner's car, a black Tesla, pulled in. A man in his late 40s, Mr. William Carter, stepped out, unnoticed. The lesson was about poetry, irony, fate, justice. Mrs. Parker decided to make an example of Leila. "Let's test our scholarship star," she said. "Tell us what irony means." Leila stood slowly. Her voice was soft but steady. "It's when something happens that's the opposite of what's expected." Mrs. Parker smirked, like when someone from a poor neighborhood ends up in a rich school. Laughter filled the room. The words sliced deeper than any grade ever could. Leila smiled faintly to hide her pain and said, "Yes, ma'am." Just like that, Mrs. Parker froze for a split second. She hadn't expected Leila to respond with such grace, but her pride refused to yield. "Sit down, dear. Maybe next time, focus more on your shoes than your sarcasm." A few students shifted uncomfortably. One of them, Ethan, whispered to a friend, "That wasn't right." But no one dared speak aloud. Lunch period. The cafeteria buzzed with noise. Leila sat alone with her small homemade sandwich. Around her, kids unpacked expensive takeout boxes. Mrs. Parker entered the room, chatting with the principal about a donor visit happening soon. As she passed Leila's table, she stopped. "Oh my," she said loudly. "That smells unique. What is that?" Leila's voice trembled. "Peanut butter and jam." "Adorable," Mrs. Parker laughed. "I suppose not everyone can afford caviar." The cafeteria went silent, the laughter this time uneasy. From a corner table, a young janitor named Grace watched quietly, disgusted. She had worked there long enough to know what hidden cruelty looked like. Grace whispered under her breath, "One day, tables too." A week later, banners fluttered across the hall, "Welcome parents and donors." It was the school's biggest day, reputation and money intertwined. Mrs. Parker rehearsed her speech in front of the mirror, bragging about discipline and elite learning. Leila waited in class, anxious. Her mother, Mary Ann Bennett, worked 2 jobs and had promised to come, but she hadn't arrived yet. When the bell rang, parents flooded the hallway. Mrs. Parker noticed Leila still sitting alone. "No one's coming for you?" she asked, voice dripping with pity. "She's working," Leila said softly. Mrs. Parker smirked. "Of course she is." She turned to the group of donors near the door. "We try to help underprivileged students, but it's hard when their families can't even attend simple meetings." The donors murmured politely. One man at the back, Mr. Carter, the owner, heard every word but didn't reveal himself yet. Minutes later, Leila's mother burst into the room, breathless, wearing a faded uniform from her cleaning job. "I'm sorry I'm late," she said. "The bus." Mrs. Parker raised a hand. "No need to explain. We understand. Punctuality isn't for everyone." The room stiffened. Leila's eyes filled. Then the door opened again. The principal entered, trailed by Mr. Carter. "Ladies and gentlemen," the principal announced, "we're honored to welcome the school owner himself." Mr. Carter, gasps. Teachers straightened. Parents whispered. Mrs. Parker immediately smiled, eager to impress. "Mr. Carter, what a surprise. I was just showing our class's brightest minds, well, most of them." He didn't respond. His eyes found Leila and her mother, the only 2 people not pretending. "Mrs. Parker," he said calmly, "I overheard your comments. You spoke about underprivileged families. Do you know who created this scholarship program?" She blinked. "Well, the board, I assume." He shook his head. "No, my wife and I did. For students like Leila." Silence fell like a stone. Mr. Carter stepped closer, his voice still calm but razor-sharp. "When I was a child, my mother cleaned schools like this one. She used to tell me, never confuse wealth with worth. I think some of us here forgot that lesson." Mrs. Parker's face turned pale. He turned to Lila and her mother. Mrs. Bennet, thank you for raising a daughter who reminds us what real education looks like. The room broke into quiet applause, the first applause Lila had ever heard for being exactly who she was. Then he looked at the principal. Effective immediately, Mrs. Parker is relieved of her duties. St. Helena will stand for dignity, not discrimination. Mrs. Parker tried to speak, but her words drowned under the sound of clapping parents. Weeks later, a new term began. Leela sat once again near the front, same seat she had been told to leave. This time, she wasn't alone. Students smiled genuinely. Even Ethan, the boy who had once stayed silent, now greeted her warmly. Outside the classroom, a new plaque gleamed on the wall. The Lila Bennett Scholarship for Students Who Shine Beyond Circumstance. As Leela read the words, her eyes filled not with pain this time, but pride. Grace, the janitor, walked by with her mop and said softly, "Told you, honey, tables always turn." The camera panned upward, sunlight flooding through the tall windows, children laughing in the background. Narrator's closing line, "The measure of education isn't how much we know, it's how we treat those who have less, and sometimes, the smallest voice teaches the loudest lesson."